All right, welcome everyone to Rural Development RD 101, Mission, Key Priorities, and Programs. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Gareth Hubbard with Land O'Lakes. Gareth?
Thanks so much, Scott. First and foremost, welcome and good morning to everybody, or rather, good afternoon if you're here on the East Coast. For many of you all first starting this new American Connection Core cohort that I may not yet have had a chance to connect with yet, want to introduce myself and hopefully I get to meet you all later on. My name's Gareth Hubbard, and I work extremely closely with Taylor and his excellent leadership team with the American Connection Core. Just to kind of step back a bit to let you know who we are, Land O'Lakes is a former-owned cooperative based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And being such a large agriculture cooperative, again, a former-owned cooperative, Land O'Lakes operates in over 10,000 rural communities all across the country. In these communities, specifically, they are where our farmers, our members, our ag retailers, our distributors is where they live, they raise their families, they farm, and they run their collective agricultural businesses. So, of course, this only undergirds just why it's so critical that we continue to really invest and continue to really focus on rural vitality, not only from a business perspective, but also too seen in our political advocacy. It was in this advocacy, specifically in the even before the COVID-19 pandemic, that our CEO, Beth Ford, really began first coming into the role, really began a road show of sorts to really go across all of the many communities that we live, serve, and operate in to really hear from our members, our farmers on the ground about core initiatives, core things that we really needed to focus on. Some of the things she heard throughout this road show were things along the lines of improving healthcare, educational systems that were faltering, infrastructure that was failing, working from home and the lack of the ability to work from home due to a disjointed connection with broadband. And it was really through this assessment that the through line across all of these conversations was essentially connected to high-speed broadband. So even before the pandemic, we began to really work hard on this at our enterprise to understand how we can better serve and support rural America. We saw in the COVID-19 pandemic all those stories that you all also saw too of little kids having to travel to a gas station or a Dairy Queen to connect with social media, education, etc. So we began to kind of go into action, and we really, from that point in time, started something called the American Connection Project, which today is a consortium of over 200 companies that advocated for that historic $65 billion that went across to every single state to improve broadband infrastructure and really close that digital divide. Why that's so pertaining to this conversation is because in that learning and in that understanding, we learned one major thing that it was one thing for these large corporations like the Land O'Lakes to advocate for this money. But if you're anything like me, to where or my father, where your rural community is governed by a part-time mayor, or maybe that the mayor's office is connected to a post office, right? How are we going to really connect this historic investment to the actual communities that really needed it? It was in that initiative that we really worked with LFA and the ACC to really start just that, the American Connection Corps, which was essentially a boots on the ground effort where we would help and support training and deployment of fellows and excited individuals to go across rural America to really serve as that entrepreneurial engine, that technical expertise to help these communities connect to this historic investment. What we've seen over here at Land O'Lakes since that has been established has been phenomenal. I mean, I think Taylor can also back me up as he'll speak later on about this. We've trained hundreds of fellows at this point and led and millions of dollars of infrastructure investment all across the country. And we love the fact that we're impacting lives and families and futures on an everyday basis. It's exciting to take a part of this, but as we continue to move forward, why I'm so excited about this specific phone call is because one, We're connecting right now with the USDA Rural Development Leadership. And rural development, as I know that Jacki will talk to you later on, is probably one of the most impactful agencies, most impactful consortiums of technical assistance, expertise, support, funding, et cetera, to really help support the rural vitality moving forward all across the country. So I'm excited that we're connecting with you all. I'm excited that you're going to learn of additional resources, people, leadership, advice, technical assistance to really help you on the boots on the ground effort to really understand how you can optimize your impact and learn that you have people in your communities, in your state, in your towns that are also lockstep walking hand in hand with you to make sure that we're connecting these communities. So I'm going to stop talking now. Again, I'm so excited that we're having this connection. I'm so excited about the future of what this connection is actually going to yield. And on that, I'm going to pass it to Jacki to talk more about USDA rural development. So thanks so much.
Hi, everyone, and very happy to be here with you today and to share a little bit about rural development. My name is Jacki Ponti-Lazaruk. I'm currently the Chief Innovation Officer for USDA Rural Development. We're the only innovation center in USDA, and we work in the RD mission area. And I'm especially happy to be working with you all through Land O'Lakes, because Land O'Lakes was one of our original cooperatives way back. Somewhere I couldn't find our picture that we had. There's this great historical picture, but there's a long-standing relationship with our rural cooperatives, and Land O'Lakes is one of those. I want to always start when we talk about USDA and rural development as to what people normally think about when they think about USDA. And you see on the screen here some images. You're welcome to put things in the chat if you want. Usually I ask people when they first think of USDA, what do they think about? Most people raise their hand around meat, right? Meat processing. Some people, it's about the plant and food inspection. If you travel and you're in and out of the continental US, or doing international travel, you'll get inspections coming through. But we also do food and nutrition. A lot of people think of us as just farming. We're USDA, and of course, we have big relationships with our farming. Food safety, which is a huge responsibility. The Forest Service, which, not everybody connects the Forest Service with USDA, but Smokey Bear is ours. And he had a big birthday this year and has been going around the country and meeting with different folks. We had him for Earth Day, and that was very exciting. We also have the Natural Resource and Conservation Service, who has their own Sammy soil, a nice clump of soil mascot, who will come around and visit with you. And we have Woodsy Owl and others. So, there are a lot of public facing pieces of USDA. And if I asked 100 people, I would bet maybe 2 would say, oh, rural economic development. I worked, this is my 34th year in federal service, public service. I love it. I chose it. I worked for the Federal Communications Commission for 15 of those years, so I have a very strong broadband connection with you all. But when people connect the dots, they don't realize this nice mission area around rural economic development. Next slide, please. So here is the USDA org chart. With all of those various components. We are the part in the green circle. And our job, our sole focus, we are the only federal mission area agency whose job it is to exclusively serve rural areas. We have lots and lots of federal partners who have bigger missions, HUD or SBA or EDA, and they're working with all parts of the country. For rural development, we are focused on rural and only rural. Rural customers are number one in our queue. And we have 3 primary agencies: the Rural Housing Service, the Rural Utilities Service, and the Rural Business and Cooperative Service. Next slide. I want to share with you our org structure and our current leadership structure. I have some nice faces for you as well. So sometimes it's good to put a face with a name. But you'll see our 3 agencies, but flagging on either side of the agencies is my organization, the Innovation Center. We'll talk a little bit about what we do in just a minute. Our state offices, we'll talk more about them, and our business center, and then our Office of External Affairs, who handles all our public facing activities, our risk office, and our civil rights office. And then you can see underneath each agency the various sub-programs. We'll talk more about that too. Next slide. So one of the things we like to make sure people know is our mission and priorities. And you can see here, our job is to facilitate rural prosperity and economic development. The words have changed slightly over the years, and that's okay. But essentially, we're here to help with the quality of rural life, a quality of life in rural America, and really to just assist rural communities and residents with getting the services they need, and ensuring that they can build the infrastructure and have entrepreneurship and business opportunities in rural America so they can thrive. Rural America is a great place to live and to raise a family and to work. More and more people are discovering it. COVID, as terrible as the crisis was, the switch to remote work has really allowed people to think about living in a rural area and possibly working remotely. So it's been really great for our rural areas in some ways. But our job is to ensure that communities have the infrastructure, the services, the housing to implement what they need going into the future. The page that you're looking at is not just a slide here. You see under the mission and priorities, we have mission and the mission statement, we have our key priorities. When this administration came on board, we sat down and we talked about the priorities going forward. We felt it was really important for staff and for our customers to know what the key priorities were, and that we would be driving towards these. And you can see the three here. They are we're on climate change, racial justice and place-based equity, and creating more and better market opportunities. What's great about this is that for the first time ever, a few years ago, we made a public-facing webpage to state affirmatively, here's our mission, here are the priorities we're going to be working on. If you go to this page that Marie just put in the chat, you'll be able to not only see what the priorities are, but we've grounded these priorities in metrics. So we can explain, what do we mean by these priorities? What metrics are we using to define who fits into these priorities? There are lookups that allow, if somebody wants to know whether they fit into our equity priority, and they might get priority points in an application process, there's a way to look up. And then there's a link to a page that tracks all of our funding notices that have priority points associated with these key priorities. And it's updated on a regular basis. So we wanted to have a regular way of, a very transparent way of saying, here's our priorities, here's where we've embedded them into our programs through discretionary points in our prioritization of projects. And here's how you know whether you qualify. I would encourage you, as you're working with communities, to make yourself familiar with the page and the lookups. And we've offered to Land O'Lakes that if you all want follow-ups on any of the tools that we have, we're happy to do a deeper dive on these. Next slide, please. So I just want to give you a sense of rural development's size. I think when last checked, we're like the 9th largest bank in the world. We've got almost $250 billion in assets, and in terms of loans, outstanding loans that in our portfolio. We put out, depending on the year and the funding available, anywhere from 26 to 38 billion. If it's a year with supplementals, like this year, we have additional funding, it might be a little more than that. You can see on the graphic, a huge chunk of what we do is housing, both direct and guaranteed housing loans, and ensuring that there's affordable housing for rural residents. We do a lot of electric and energy loans, water and sewer, our community facilities, multifamily housing, business development, business enterprise loans, business construction loans, lots and lots of different ways to help starting and existing businesses. And then, of course, telecom and broadband, which is one of the programs that I ran. When I first came to rural development, I came to run the telecom program and then spent about a decade running the water and waste programs before I stood up the risk office and then came to the innovation center. So I very much aligned with what it is that you all are trying to do. I'm super excited to be talking to all of you. We've got 70 plus programs, and we have over 1 million borrowers and loans. And this 235 billion is our loans and guarantees. We also have grants that we give and manage. So it's a fairly large portfolio, and a huge resource for rural America. And even with all the work that we do and have done and all the outreach we do, there are still communities who do not know that they are eligible for our program. So there's a role for you here as you work with communities to really help them understand. Next slide. So what is rural? You have the answers on the slide here, but when you think of rural, maybe you put in the chat what you think of rural. What if you were to define to your relatives, I live in a rural town. What's the largest rural town you would think, would be defined by rural? As you all are putting in those answers in the chat, for us, we don't get to decide rural. I know our federal partners, some of them think of rural as 100,000. That's a small city to them. For us, Congress determines program by program. We have a special set of definitions in the Con Act and in the Housing Act around what our rural definitions are. So they vary from anywhere from 10,000, which is our general parameter in our water and waste program, all the way up to 50,000, which is our max at this point. Our water and waste guaranteed, our community facilities guaranteed, our business guarantees, and most of our business programs run into that 50,000 range. Most of our direct programs are lower in population, like our electric and telecom that have different subsets, but top out around the 20,000. Our community facilities are around 20,000. And then of course our water is at 10. You'll not remember anything I just said, and that's okay. It's a lot of information. There is a program guide, and we'll give you a QR code for that later, but in the back of it, it lists what the population limits are for each program. So you'll know those. I love that someone's got a Sierra, your 300-person hometown. I've worked with very small towns, both at my time at the FCC, but also here at USDA Rural Development. And we work with any town, no matter how small. And our rural areas are resilient. They have a definite sense of who they are and what they want to be and how much they want to grow or not grow. And we respect that. And we want to work with them, meet them where they are, figure out what their needs are, and help them. Next slide, please. So talked about our core mission being the rural quality of life and prosperity. When we think about healthy, thriving, economically growing communities, sustainable communities, there are all these components that you see around the wheel here, right? We are able to bring assistance to rural areas to tap into each of those areas, either through our RD programs, which we'll get more into, through data, through our Rural Data Gateway, which we will also share with you. We have a Rural Partners Network that we'll talk a little bit more about that connects us and our rural customers up through and across the federal government. We have a project called CORE that's focused on small and distressed and disadvantaged communities, trying to make sure we are not leaving them behind, that they get interaction and engagement. We have our rural health liaison who sits in my innovation center, but serves all of USDA to try to be a connection point, almost an ombudsman around rural health. We are in the Innovation Center. We are also the Center for Tribal Technical Assistance, and making sure tribal voices are not only tribes can reach out to us for assistance if they're having trouble with a particular application or a policy issue, but also that they have a voice in regulations development and the way we interact with tribes in our processes. We also are a center point for the public-private philanthropic partnerships. Rural development has leveraged these in many ways over the years. We are right now trying to harness all of that into a very coordinated approach through a front door through the Innovation Center. And then we also look at customer experience. And so we're looking at ways that we can improve our processes across rural development. Right now, we have an initiative around our grants to make them better, easier to use. As much as we reach out, right, and do these things, we're a fairly, decent sized organization, but we are about half of what we have been in the past. And so we rely on partners like you to help us engage with customers, give them awareness of our programs, help them figure out how to navigate them, and to work in collaboration so that we can get those resources to rural areas where they need them, and get them on the path that they want to be on going forward for the future of the community and all its citizens. Next slide. So we like to say we can build a town from the ground up, and pretty much we can fund most everything. We don't do operations and maintenance. We're usually building hard infrastructure or equipment, purchases of equipment or land. And you can see here, we do everything. We have a variety of business programs to support entrepreneurs, to help. One of my favorite little programs is value-added producer grants. I don't know if any of you have worked with that program before. It's an awesome program that, if you are a business that is taking an agricultural product and taking it to that next level and creating something new. For example, you might take grapes and make them into wine, or you might take hemp and make it into flooring. Like we have lots of different creative ways that businesses use ag products and create a value-added service or product around them. And we have support for those entrepreneurs as they move through that process. We also have regular business and industry loan guarantees, excuse me, to help with everything from construction of a manufacturing facilities or variety of different retrofits or equipment needed in a particular facility. Lots and lots of different business programs. We have our Rural Energy for America program that allows for energy efficiency improvements to businesses. Great program right now, especially because we've got a lot of Inflation Reduction Act money on the grant side for small. There's a lot of projects, but small projects, but very meaningful. So companies or cooperatives or other entities who are serving rural or in rural, and they're needing to add energy efficiency improvements to their facilities. We can build on the energy and electric side, everything from power generation to distribution to final delivery and transmission in between. We, of course, have our telecom programs. We have our housing programs, both single family and multifamily housing. Our community facilities is one of my favorite programs because it is so broad and flexible. All those things that might not fit somewhere else, fire trucks, police cars, courthouses, even just making it an energy efficient courthouse. I've seen additions and energy efficiency projects, schools, libraries, hospitals. A lot of them fit under an essential community facility. We, of course, have our cooperative service where we help stand up and help cooperatives stand up and operate. And then we have our water and waste program, which provides loans and grants for construction of water and waste facilities, but also technical assistance to help plan for improvements to those facilities, be ready for disasters like the ones that are happening now due to the hurricanes. And then our telecommunications program is funds to deploy broadband in rural areas. Next slide. There we go. We wanted to touch on the telecom programs a little bit because we know that's at the heart of how you all began. We've got our Reconnect program, which is we've had this for the last several years. Something Congress gave us. We're super happy to have the options that are in it. It's loan grant combinations, and then there's technical assistance funding, but it's all to deploy high-speed broadband out across rural America. And it's really to those connections that get right to the home. It receives a certain number of dollars every year, and it's highly competitive, but it is moving deployment into rural areas. We have broadband technical assistance, which we had gotten really for the first time through Reconnect, and this allows for TA providers to be able to apply to us for monies to go help rural areas develop their application packages, do feasibility studies, and really help them get to the point where they can get an award from us or someone else who might have funds available. Our Farm Bill Broadband Loan Program is the predecessor to Reconnect. When I first came to rural development, they were just in the development of this program, and it's loan only. We had asked for grant and other things at that time, way back at the beginning of the 2000s. And this program did not have it. It's been dormant for a little bit, and we're hoping with a new farm bill, it'll be either reignited or combined into the Reconnect program, but we don't know what that will look like yet. Our infrastructure loan program is our traditional telecom program, and this goes back to the time when the Rural Utility Service, under the mission area that is rural development, was ensuring that rural communities were not left behind in the digital and before broadband in the telephone expansion. And so that program started with telephone. It became a telephone/broadband program. A lot of it's for our cooperatives, mostly our cooperatives. So you have a lot of telephone cooperatives who participate in that program and have brought telephone service across rural areas, and we're really the first broadband providers in those rural areas. That program still exists. There's funding available for that. And then Community Connect grants is a program that's designed to give grants to areas that don't have any broadband access to help them get up and started. It is, again, a predecessor of the Reconnect program, but it allows a small town to be able to apply for and get monies to stand up a broadband network. We have our distance learning and telemedicine program. It's a grant program, and it's a terrific program that offers, it is mostly about equipment that connects across telecommunications or broadband connections to allow services around distance learning and telemedicine. So we have mobile vans who go out and provide medical services. There are like the Visiting Angels. We have customers who come in and apply for grants so that they can create a learning network, and they just need the equipment in order to train, say, nurses in rural areas or other educational opportunities. Highly competitive grant program, but a really good one that you should be aware of as you're working with your communities, and one that may be that missing piece where they have all the other components. They just need a little bit of money to help them get some equipment to connect across. Next slide. So types of assistance we do, we have loans, direct loans that we do, where we are the lender and you saw our portfolio. We do grants, we do loan and grant combinations. Our grants oftentimes are in combination with a loan to try to keep that cost affordable. One of the key components of our programs is to ensure that these services get to rural America and that they're affordable. I don't know how many of you live in a rural area, but the cost of water and waste service tends to be higher in a rural area because there are fewer people to spread that cost across. And so one of the purposes of our programs is to try to keep those costs as affordable as possible. We also guarantee commercial loans that are made by banks, whether they're local or regional or national banks, but they're made in rural areas to support businesses or water infrastructure projects or community facilities projects. And we guarantee those loans so that capital is available in rural America, but we reduce some of that risk so that banks will lend in rural areas. We can and do have some cooperative agreements where we will reach out to a party and say we need some help building a toolkit around something, or we need your help doing a very specialized technical assistance. We also have technical assistance grants where there are windows for third-party technical assistance providers to come in and apply for monies to then deploy technical assistance out in rural areas. You can see we have a huge variety of customers. It could be a local municipality, it could be a municipal district like a water district or a sewer district. We work with tribes, they're eligible for all of our programs. Private nonprofits, cooperatives, utilities, individuals. Our housing program is one of the few places we do have individuals, businesses, and ag producers. But there are many, many customers and many, many programs, which is why we often try to find ways to help you navigate these as you work with communities. Next slide. So here is one of your first QR codes. This is one that will take you to our program page and let you begin to explore. I will not be offended as long as you're listening. If you want to poke around and use the QR code and start searching our sites, that's why we're doing this. You will also get a copy of this presentation so that you'll have it and you can keep all your little QR codes handy. Next slide. At the Innovation Center over the last couple of years, we've been working to get all of our rural development data that's spread out across many systems and many programs, but into one place where we can aggregate it, share it with the public, tell you where we're making investments, how much of those investments are, and what types of investments they are. So a year ago, February, we launched the Rural Data Gateway. It has data back to 2011. And by the way, most of our grant agreements are like a 3-year grant agreement. Our loans can go up to 40 years. So we often have very, very long relationships with our borrowers and our customers and our rural communities. And one of the things, I usually say is, we don't want to date our rural communities. We want to have a long lasting relationship, right? And so we work very hard to develop and keep those relationships going forward. As you work with communities, if they're not familiar with us, we would greatly appreciate you, bringing them to us and helping us establish new relationships and helping increase our impact. But the Rural Data Gateway, if you use that little QR code there or the link, it is a great place to go to check out where the investments have been or not been. We find that when we go to conferences and we show people the Rural Data Gateway, like if we were out at NACO last year, and a lot of communities wanted to see where they fared on monies from USDA as compared to their fellow counties. You can see all that on these visualizations on the Rural Data Gateway. It's an award-winning tool, and it is used. We had 100% increase in usage over the last 12 months. We expect more. We hope that you will go and use it in the work that you're doing. And it does have a feedback mechanism. So we encourage you to use it, play with it. If you have things that you think, gosh, it'd be nice if we had X, just let us know. You can let us know through your leadership and they can connect with us. But we do listen to those things. The Gateway has expanded and will continue to expand based on customer desire. Next slide. A year or so ago, maybe a year and a half, we developed something called the Rural Partners Network. This was a secretary's initiative and sits in our Rural Development State Operations Office. And the idea is a whole of government approach to assisting communities that are highly distressed and highly socially vulnerable. There's a whole process in which communities and networks in various states can apply. Right now, we're in 10 states and Puerto Rico. The key difference with this program, two things. One is that if you are a network that is accepted into the Rural Partners Network, we will assign a dedicated technical assistance person, a liaison, who is a federal employee who works for us, whose job it is to help your network plan and navigate and get through our system. It's a real it's just a wonderful way to help those communities. It does require that we have funds to do that. And so our footprint is what it is now. As we grow and are able to grow with budget appropriations, then this will expand. But as we talk to Land O'Lakes about your work, and I think you've already had, or some of you may have seen a presentation on RPM, there are opportunities for you all to help us be that liaison and bring some of that information back into the RPN network. Now, that is from the customer, right? Between the customer and either the third-party technical assistance provider or RD. But then there's also a connection point out through to all the federal agencies. There's a whole host of federal agencies who have desk officers who are part of RPN, so that if there is a question about a project that might need additional funds and how things can stack, oftentimes in rural areas, it's multiple funding sources that make it possible to do a project. And this is just a way to help with that communication and to align where we can and to help each other. And so it's a great concept. It stood up a few years ago. It's one that I think you'll, in your role, be able to work with us on. Next slide. CORE is, it's similar, but not the same as RPN. CORE was something that actually predated RPN. It was a project that we launched in the Innovation Center at the beginning of this administration. And it really was a way to use the data we had to try to get to areas where we felt were really underserved. And we started with metrics around distressed communities, highly distressed communities from the Distressed Communities Index, and socially vulnerable communities using the SVI index over at CDC. And then we overlaid that information with community profile information and also our data, our investment data. And we looked at places down to the census tract level where the agency has not had obligations, where we hadn't made investments in 5 or more years. And we looked below the county level and down to the census tract level to ensure that we were getting to those areas that maybe not that they're just not the highest priority. County has many, many needs, and this way, and we're helping them meet their needs, but there may be a pocket that is highly distressed and highly socially vulnerable and needs service, but just is lower on the priority. And one place where we thought it would be good to do some outreach. Part of a big central component of CORE was just to listen and to figure out why service isn't there right now, whether and what were the barriers. Sometimes people are just unaware of what's available to them through rural development, they're just not aware of rural development at all. Sometimes it may be they had a bad experience, not, either with us or with some other part of USDA or the federal government, and they just never came back to us. It could be a whole host of reasons. So we're careful in designing this to think about our engagement to these communities, go in a listening posture, and really try to figure out what are those barriers and what are their current needs and where they are now in the process of addressing those needs, and how we could wrap around either our technical assistance, or if they're ready, our program dollars to help them. We did not set a large financial goal. We identified, we now have like 13,000 little census tract pockets that we're trying to get to. We have 760 or so that we've already gotten to with no additional staff. And as a result of this engagement, we not only have logged information about what their needs are and what those barriers are, what they might be working on, but we've been able to make awards that we wouldn't necessarily have known were there. And over $700 million in the last 3 years have gone into these areas. So it's a big deal for us. We're super excited to be serving these areas, but there is a source of information. So if you're working in one of our core communities, and we may have some information on what we've heard from them. If you begin to work with them, we would very much like to hear what you're hearing from them and connect them to the state office as you need. Okay. One of the other ways that we help you navigate all our many, many programs are our resource guides. This is just a sampling of them. There's the big QR code. Go there. You'll see a number of resource guides that says they're topical. So right now, a lot of people are looking at our disaster and resource and recovery guide. And what it does is it says, don't look at all 70 programs. Here are programs that fit your topic across rural development, across USDA. We often in our guides will have other agency programs across the federal space that pair well with our money. I would encourage you, as you're working with communities, to familiarize yourself with these, so that as you're talking to them about what they might need, there may be a guide. If they want to build up their recreational economy, there are programs that fit within that, and all the way from planning stages up to construction projects. If you do one thing today, I would ask that you subscribe to Innovation Managed, not for me, because I don't get anything out of it. We're not making any money on this, but it is a monthly newsletter that goes out to thousands and thousands of subscribers that we have now. And it provides information and links to funding opportunities in rural areas across the country, across federal programs. Sometimes we'll usually have a highlight of a particular topic or a program. We've done ones on broadband. We've done highlighted the energy department's programs that they were launching. It's a great little guide to what's happening in rural grants every month, and it's free of charge. It's one email. We don't pester you with 1,000 other emails, but I would encourage you strongly to subscribe to it. And then if you're working with communities, have them subscribe to it so that they're aware of what's coming up. And then we have the link, of course, to our latest edition. Next slide, please. One of the things that we found and were charged with was the placemaking planning, different from economic development planning, is something that is desired and needed in rural areas. In working with rural areas, even before I got to USDA over the last couple of decades, they're not only great places to live, they have great people with a real sense of who they are. But as communities, communities grow and change, businesses and large employers may go away and others will come in, or the sense of who that community is and how they want to be seen can change. And so sometimes there's a need for placemaking planning to plan your sense of place into specific actions that tell the world this is who you are, that attract others to your area for tourism or for living in an area, and then builds into your economic development plan. We began doing some placemaking grants. We had money for a few years. We're hoping to get those grant dollars back in future years. But we also felt that there needed to be a toolkit available to rural communities. So they did not, oftentimes you're working with a technical assistance provider who is very familiar with building a placemaking plan, but some communities have folks with capacity and can take a toolkit and take their community through it. We wanted to have an available resource, so we signed a cooperative agreement with the University of Kentucky, and they have a team that is very, very experienced in placemaking, and we built this placemaking toolkit. It is online, free of charge. I would encourage you to just take a look at it, see if it's something you want to work with your communities on. And we're happy to do additional deep dive training on that. The end of May, there will be I think it's our third annual placemaking networking event. It's virtual, it's online. You will get a link to join us if you'd like to, but I would encourage you, if you have communities who are interested, for them to join. It's a place where they can learn more about placemaking, get a sense of how to use the toolkit, meet funders, meet other communities who are also doing their placemaking planning, and connect with TA providers as well. Great little tool, free of charge to you. So wanted to give you a little bit of information about our Innovation Center. We are a little bit of a different animal in the federal space. A lot of innovation hubs are about project-specific or initiatives and really driving innovation. We are that, but we also have other components that tether us to the regular work of the agency and program delivery. Our whole purpose is we're like a solutions and strategy organization to help our agency, all the agencies across the mission area, improve delivery of our programs and the impact of that delivery on rural America. So we have 3 primary components: our data analysis and solutions team that builds tools internally and externally, like our World Data Gateway. We do impact evaluation, a whole host of other studies and data analytics. And more and more of those are being flipped to the public side. But, we have many that we do, the risk dashboards and ways that we respond. We built them for COVID. We have tools that are being used now in the response to the current hurricanes, and ways to drive decisions, policy process decisions based on data, based on not just metrics, but based on layers and layers of data and analysis to try to make more of an impact in rural. We're also the central service center around regulations, development, and implementation. So when we get a new program to stand up, we're working hand in hand with our program offices to help draft those new rules, get them cleared, and get them published and out to customers. We also are in charge of the regulatory agenda and for connecting the dots across all of the agencies about where change might be needed to implement administration priorities or customer asks that will help either improve the customer experience, reduce burden, or increase the impact across all of our programs. And the third piece is our customer engagement group. And here's where we have our CX team and our tribal technical assistance team, our rural regional development and assistance branch, and our research group. This is where we build our toolkits that we've showed you some of our resource guides. They're built out of this group. We take customer input in and share that with programs, help them act on that customer feedback. We build projects like CORE or assist in the development of things like RPN. We do big transformational projects as well. So this customer engagement piece also includes our public-private philanthropic partnerships like the one we're talking about today. And then finally, of course, we have our incubation activities. And this is where we try things and we move the agency forward in innovative ways, incubate an idea, organize it, stand it up, almost like a mini consulting firm, and then help it get to its operating state and into the right part of RD to keep it running. So a lot under the Innovation Center hood, but we are oftentimes we're a coordination point. So rather than a large entity who wants to work with us, having to go program by program, we are a place where people can come, we can have a discussion, talk about where the connection points might be, and help promote and facilitate those connections so to align interests and get to a good result. Next slide. Rural Development is a federal agency, but we largely work locally. We do have a national office, but we do have a lot of staff who work remotely. My team is a completely remote team across the country. We do have 47 state offices, not just in the Innovation Center, but across rural development, each with their own political appointee, an administration appointee who is in charge of our rural program delivery in the state. They have staff in their state office, but then they also have smaller area offices who serve across the state. Next slide. And so we were thinking about ways that American Connection Corps or Land O'Lakes might connect with us. If I were to, one of the most immediate ways, if you are working with a community in a particular state, is to connect with our rural development field offices, our state director. It's a good starting point, or we have a state director and a deputy state director, and then we have program directors. In the deck, I believe we give you a link to the state director lookup table. And if we haven't, then we'll put it in the chat. But we want to make sure that you have a place and a name to connect to locally. One of the things that we've asked in return is that we do a similar presentation for our state directors about the work that you all are doing, to do kind of a warm handoff so they know you're coming if you haven't already connected with them. But they're a great place to start your connection within the state. Also operating locally, but sometimes cover multiple states, are what we call our general field representatives. They don't work for the state director. They often are working for the national office programs, like our electric and telecom programs, which are national programs. And but they're like a circuit rider and available to talk to you about broadband or energy and electric programs. And we are providing you also with a list of who they are and where they're located, a way to look those up. As we, hopefully, this is just the start of a terrific relationship. And as we noodle and think about what your interests are and where our interests are in terms of mission and where those alignments might happen, there might be other opportunities for us to connect and grow the relationship. And we would have you work through the IC, and then our job is to do that initial relationship building, triage, analysis, try to figure out where those connection points are, and then help facilitate not only those connections, but the work that'll come from them to help our rural areas. Next slide. Just want to end on the fact that we are very people focused. As much as we have programs and dollars and requirements for us as federal employees to meet all kinds of statutory and regulatory requirements, we are always focused on the people. They're our mission. Our roots are rural. We live in rural. We help rural people. We wanted to share with you this slide because it's got a whole host of different projects we've done. One of the stories I really like is this one with the woman, and I met her at it's the third one over on the first row, but I met her at a rural health conference, and she's someone who came up to me afterwards. She's someone who's a rural health provider, and she's working in rural areas now to ensure that they have access to rural health needs. But she came up to tell me she just wanted to thank rural development because years ago she had needed help, and she ended up getting a rural development single family housing loan, which allowed her to have a safe and good place for she and her children to live, and for her to advance her education. And in return, all these years later, she's still living and working in rural areas to help. And so to me, that ecosystem and that kind of full circle mission impact is really kind of exciting. It's what we live for. It's what we love. It's what gets us out of bed every day. And we're super excited to be doing it. And we're super excited to work with you as you roll out the mission of your organization. Next slide. Another QR code. There is a document that is the program guide, and it lists every program we have and the basic requirements and links to those programs. This is a QR code you will want to capture. And then next slide. This is my favorite slide. I created this for myself. And then it has become very popular as we travel around or do events like this. Much of what we talked to you about today, our Rural Health Liaison, our Placemaking Toolkit, the Rural Data Gateway, rural.gov, and CORE, here are all your QR codes in one place. It's not the prettiest slide, but it is very convenient, and I would encourage you to save this somewhere and keep it handy. And if you're at an event with us, you'll see us with it, and you can get a card and pin it up on your wall wherever you work. And I think that's it. We've given you some contact points, and I probably have run over a little bit, but this is just a basic overview. There's a lot under the hood. We look forward to working with you and happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Thanks, Jacki. Really appreciate your presentation and everything that you and the team at USDA Rural Development is doing, taking time to meet with us today. For the members that are on the call, appreciate you being here. This was kind of a quick turnaround opportunity, but one that we wanted to take advantage of, and really just super excited to continue to build on this partnership. As Jacki noted, this is really just the beginning, and find ways to ensure that these resources are finding their way to you all and the communities that you're serving across the country. Also just wanted to thank Gareth and our partners at Land O'Lakes, whose support really enabled us to form this amazing AmeriCorps program, and whose continued support was really essential in connecting you all to these amazing partners at Rural Development. So one thing I just wanted to kind of close out with was to say that, I've been in your shoes working on the ground level in a rural community. And as I was telling Jacki yesterday, I found the rural development team to be an essential connection to have in my work in Ohio. And I've always made sure to keep up with their programs and resources and stay connected to their incredibly supportive staff, which you'll find in your state and across your area and can connect with, and we'll help you do that. Unfortunately, one of the challenges, as the RD staff knows all too well, is that it can often be difficult to get the word out on these resources. So this is really where you all come in. An essential part of your service is to be that boots on the ground conduit to things like these resources for your community, to be a connector. We often say the American Connection Core has many different meanings to it. And one of those meanings is connecting to resources like this for your community. So, you have a tremendous opportunity in being plugged into this national network. It gives you direct access to these resources and technical support. I will say that when I was in your shoes, I did not have that kind of direct connection that you have through ACC. So please take advantage of the position that you're in. Read through the materials that are being shared. Let us know if you have any questions or you want to learn more. I've already bookmarked that Rural Data Gateway site. You all should too. You should subscribe to the newsletter. Check out that placemaking toolkit. It's a fantastic resource for your work. And like I said, this really is a partnership that we'll continue to build on. So don't hesitate to reach out to us, your program officers, staff at LFA, myself directly to get you connected to the rural development team. And of course, you can always reach out to the rural development team directly as well, whether that's in your state or elsewhere, to fully understand how you can connect to these resources and connect those resources to your communities and your neighbors. So again, thank you, Jacki and the team and everyone for being here.
May I add one extra point, which
Yes.
is when you're working with communities, go in, when you connect to rural development, go in with a posture of, we probably can do something. Don't assume that we can't. Oftentimes I was reading in the chat about the Piggly Wiggly, and we know all too well, getting a grocery store is a big deal in a small town. But there are other ways to get food into areas as well. Food pantries and others that we can't fund a grocery store under our essential community facilities program. We can fund a food pantry. We get creative. So we figure out ways that we can help you. Come in with an ask. Don't be shy. We may not be able to do everything, but we try. We try to find a way to make our programs wrap around what you need as best we can. So ask, please.
Yeah, please ask. And I don't know if you saw, but Vicky, one of our members in Illinois, who also is a farmer herself, was asking about how to find out about USDA sponsored events or where you guys will be, so that she can participate and get kind of direct access. Maybe we can follow up with you, Vicky, but I would think touching base with your state office would be a good start as well.
Yep, state office and the state office homepage. Every state office has somebody called a public information officer whose job it is to plan those events. And so in addition to the state director, I would take the opportunity to introduce yourself to the public information officer. It's one of the reasons we wanted to do a flip of this, the similar version of this for our state offices, so they'd know when you picked up the phone and called them that, they'd already had some knowledge that you're coming. So we will make sure that webinar gets going. But in the meantime, you've got a link to the state office page, and do reach out to them. I'll send a little note to all of our state directors today and our public information officers to say that we had this meeting, and that we'll be working on a webinar for them. But in the meantime, if they hear from you, to pick up the phone and answer. If you're in a state where Helene is happening or Milton is occurring, it might take them a little bit longer to get back to you, but otherwise our state offices are fairly responsive. If for some reason you are unable to get a response, please feel free to use that. There's an email address to the Innovation Center. We have someone manning that, and we are happy to make that warm connection for you.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
It's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, again, yeah, thanks for the taking the time to meet with the members, and we'll certainly keep you posted if we have any follow-up questions or connections to be made, and we'll keep them posted on all of these resources. These slides will be available to them, is that correct?
Yes, these slides will be available. I also would encourage you there's so much we could talk about, and I know we're out of time, but as you're working with your communities, do think about your rural utilities, your electric cooperative, your telecom cooperative, your water systems as partners. There are programs that are available through rural development to them, like our Red Leg program that allows them to make loans out to communities at very low interest rates to build, assisted living facilities or other things. And so there's so many programs and options. Do think about them as partners as well.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I think that wraps up this webinar. So again, thank you everyone for being here, and we'll be in touch, and we'll continue to build on this connection and this partnership. Really excited by it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good rest of the